Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Preet Bharara, and I'm the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Today we announced charges in what may be the largest international money laundering case ever brought by the United States. Specifically, we unsealed charges against Liberty Reserve and 7 of its principals and employees, who for years have operated one of the world's most widely used digital currencies. But as alleged, the only liberty that Liberty Reserve gave many of its users was the freedom to commit crimes, as it became a popular hub for fraudsters, hackers, and traffickers. The global enforcement action that we announced today is an important step towards reining in the Wild West of illicit internet banking. As detailed in the indictment, Liberty Reserve was intentionally created and structured to facilitate criminal activity. It was essentially a black market bank. As alleged, Liberty Reserve deliberately operated in a way to attract and aid criminals who wished to use digital currency to break the law and to launder the proceeds of their crimes. Serious crimes, including credit card fraud, identity theft, investment fraud, computer hacking, child pornography, and even narcotics trafficking. All told, Liberty Reserve allegedly processed 55 million separate financial transactions and laundered a staggering $6 billion in criminal proceeds. We have indicted Liberty Reserve itself because, as alleged, its entire existence was based on a criminal business model. In addition, we have charged 7 individuals, 5 of whom were arrested this past Friday. They are Arthur Budofsky, the principal founder of Liberty Reserve, who was arrested in Spain; Vladimir Katz, a co-founder of Liberty Reserve, who was arrested in New York; Azzedine El Amin, a manager of Liberty Reserve's financial accounts, who was arrested in Spain; Mark Marmalev, who helped design and maintain Liberty Reserve's technological infrastructure and who was arrested in New York; Maxim Chukarev, who also helped manage Liberty Reserve's technological infrastructure and who was arrested in Costa Rica. 2 other defendants, Messrs. Abdelghani and Jimenez, remain at large in Costa Rica. In addition to bringing criminal charges, today we have also effectively shut down Liberty Reserve by seizing its domain name as well as its computer servers in Sweden, Switzerland, and Costa Rica. We have also seized $25 million and counting of Liberty Reserve funds, and we have so far restrained or seized a total of 45 bank accounts around the world. So what is or was Liberty Reserve? As described in our papers, it was a company incorporated in Costa Rica which operated a popular digital currency. As alleged, Liberty Reserve quickly became a financial hub of the cybercrime world, facilitating all manner of online crimes, from identity theft to child pornography, and over time, it became the bank of choice for the criminal underworld. By providing layers of anonymity, the company allowed users to engage in criminal transactions with an impunity that would have been impossible in the legitimate financial system. As described in the indictment, the scope of the defendant's alleged unlawful conduct is truly staggering. With over 1 million users worldwide, including 200,000 in the United States, Liberty Reserve grew to process annually more than 12 million financial transactions with a combined value of over $1.4 billion. Overall, Liberty Reserve is believed to have processed 55 million separate transactions and laundered more than $6 billion in criminal proceeds, as I mentioned. Now, what made Liberty Reserve, its digital currency, so attractive to criminals? The coin of the realm, so to speak, was anonymity, multiple layers of anonymity. As alleged, Liberty Reserve was deliberately structured and operated in a way to help other criminals remain anonymous, untraceable, and untouchable. First, as described, its founder, Arthur Budofsky, specifically set about building a digital currency through a company he incorporated in Costa Rica in order to elude U.S. law enforcement. Ultimately, Budofsky even formally renounced his U.S. citizenship, explicitly admitting concerns about legal liability in the U.S. Second, and more importantly, Liberty Reserve offered users almost complete anonymity. Unlike traditional banks or legitimate online payment processors, Liberty Reserve did not require users to validate personal identifying information at all. Unlike traditional banks, Liberty Reserve had the opposite of a know your customer policy. As a result, and as set forth in the indictment, Liberty Reserve users routinely and brazenly established accounts under fictitious names like Russia Hackers and Hacker Account. In fact, during the investigation, an undercover agent working as part of this group was able to register an account at Liberty Reserve using the name Joe Bogus, the account name To Steal Everything, and the address 123 Fake Main Street in completely made-up city, USA. Perhaps some of you live there. The same undercover then used his Liberty Reserve account to conduct transactions that he described as being for quote-unquote ATM skimming work in one case, and as being for the cocaine, in quotes, in another. Third, Liberty Reserve provided anonymity in another important way also. As alleged, to buy the digital currency that Liberty Reserve offered, users were effectively barred from funding their accounts directly to Liberty Reserve, nor could they withdraw funds directly from Liberty Reserve. Instead, every user was required to go through third-party exchangers, certain pre-approved vendors of Liberty Reserve currency that operated without any significant oversight or regulation in countries such as Malaysia, Russia, Nigeria, and Vietnam. Users had to wire real money to these third-party exchangers who, after taking a fee for themselves, gave LR or Liberty Reserve credits to the users that bought the digital currency. So what was the point of this? We allege that it was to prevent the creation of a centralized financial paper trail, to make it harder for law enforcement to investigate the crimes being committed using Liberty Reserve, and to make it easier for Liberty Reserve to claim it had no idea that all these criminals were making use of its digital currency. Finally, Liberty Reserve sought to protect its users from law enforcement by protecting itself, or attempting to do so, from the law's reach. Among other things, as detailed in the indictment, the defendants tried to protect their criminal business by lying to anti-money laundering authorities in Costa Rica, even pretending that the company was shut down after learning that it was under investigation by U.S. law enforcement authorities, and moving tens of millions of dollars through shell companies in Cyprus, Morocco, Australia, China, and Russia, and other places as well. Now, why did they do all of this? Because, as also described in our papers, as one defendant said to another, Liberty Reserve's business was quote-unquote illegal, and open quote, everyone in the USA, such as DOJ, close quote, knows that Liberty Reserve is a, quote, money laundering operation that hackers use, close quote. And today, the whole world knows that as well. Now, this case, as you might imagine, is important for a number of reasons. Among others, it provides something of an update to an old law enforcement adage, follow the virtual money. And in this case, we followed it all over the world. And as I've said many times, as crime grows increasingly global, the long arm of the law has to get even longer. And in this case, it encircled the earth. If you take a look at the chart to my right, you can see how many different places law enforcement activity took place and how many different places there was illicit activity that was taking place as well. According to this map, you'll see that there were 17 different countries where things occurred in connection with the investigation and the takedown, including MLATs that were sent, bank accounts that were freezed, defendants that were frozen, bank accounts, MLATs that were issued. I think we have a total of 5 arrests, as I mentioned, and activity that occurred across 5 continents with $25 million, as I mentioned, in restrained assets and counting. And there's more to come because we're not finished. So as you can see from the map and from the allegations in our papers, we have truly entered an era of coordinated global enforcement. I particularly want to praise the extraordinary work of the case agents on this matter. This investigation has been as comprehensive as it has been innovative. Among other things, in the 18 months leading up to this indictment, the agents and our foreign partners have executed more than 30 search warrants, including one of the first ever searches of a so-called cloud server, obtained multiple wiretaps, reviewed countless documents, and conducted innumerable interviews. Of course, the worldwide enforcement chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and so every country should be encouraged and urged to do everything it can do to beef up money laundering enforcement as much as possible. Now, the internet is an amazing gift, but it also has an ugly underbelly. Cybercrime poses one of the greatest threats we face as a country, threatening our national security, our financial security, and our privacy. And so for that reason, we will continue to make cybercrime a significant priority, and we will continue not only to prosecute cybercriminals, but to dismantle the online infrastructure like Liberty Reserve that makes widespread cybercrime possible. Now, I want to thank some folks, so please bear with me. There were so many dedicated and creative public servants who brought us to this point. It's impossible to name them all, but let me thank some of the agencies that are represented here today. First, I would like to thank our partner in this case, the Asset Forfeiture and Money Laundering Section of the Department of Justice, represented here today by Acting Assistant Attorney General Maithili Raman. I would also like to thank our investigative partner in this case, the Global Illicit Financial Team, or GIFT. The GIFT is a task force comprised of 3 agencies that this office is honored to work with day in and day out. The United States Secret Service, represented today by Stephen Hughes, Special Agent in charge of the New York office. The IRS, represented here today by Richard Weber, Chief of IRS Criminal Investigations. And Immigration and Customs Enforcement's Homeland Security Investigations, represented by Jim Hayes, Special Agent in charge of the New York office. I also want to thank the Secret Service's New York, New Jersey Electronic Crimes Task Force, who did so much work to bring us to this point. I also want to thank the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, represented here today by Director Jennifer Shasky-Calvary. And we are also joined today by Treasury Undersecretary David Cohen, who will talk about a related money laundering enforcement action against Liberty Reserve as well. And of course, as always, I want to express my appreciation to the career prosecutors who have conducted this extensive investigation leading to the charges we unseal today, and they are Assistant U.S. Attorneys in the Complex Fraud Unit as well as the Asset Forfeiture Unit. So now let me call to the podium one of our most important partners in this case, Maithili Raman, the Acting Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division at the Department of Justice.
Thank you, Preet. Today we strike a severe blow against a professional money laundering enterprise charged with laundering over $6 billion in proceeds. As charged in the indictments unsealed today, Liberty Reserve was a financial hub for cybercriminals, Ponzi schemers, child pornographers, identity thieves, and other criminals seeking to hide, launder, and use ill-gotten gains. As charged, Liberty Reserve operated on an enormous scale a digital currency system designed to provide cyber and other criminals with a way to launder their profits without leaving a trace. Liberty Reserve was a massive criminal enterprise servicing more than 1 million users globally, including 200,000 in the United States alone. The company's very purpose was to launder its users' criminal proceeds through the U.S. and global financial system. So committed, in fact, was the principal founder of Liberty Reserve to avoid the reach of U.S. law that, according to the indictment, in 2011, he formally renounced his U.S. citizenship and became a Costa Rican citizen, telling immigration authorities that he was concerned the software in his company that his company was developing might, quote, open him up to liability in the United States. His co-founder doubled down on that sentiment in an online chat captured by law enforcement, noting that, quote, everyone in the United States, including the Justice Department, knows that Liberty Reserve is, quote, a money laundering operation that hackers use. The coordinated global actions we announced today have permanently put this professional money laundering enterprise out of business. By indicting Liberty Reserve and its principals, restraining over $25 million in criminal proceeds, forfeiting domain names, and seizing servers in countries around the globe, our message is clear. Money launderers can run, but they can't hide from U.S. law enforcement. 3 years ago, the Criminal Division of the Justice Department announced the creation of the Money Laundering and Bank Integrity Unit. The mission of this elite group of lawyers within our Asset Forfeiture and Money Laundering section is to prosecute professional money launderers and financial institutions, particularly those using the latest and most innovative and sophisticated money laundering techniques, such as digital currency, to move the money of transnational organized crime syndicates, drug cartels, and other criminals. Today, this unit, working together with our partners at the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York, has brought what we believe to be the largest international money laundering prosecution in the Department of Justice's history. Combating the threat of global illicit finance requires using every tool we have at our disposal. And today we demonstrate our resolve to ensure that the criminals who exploit the U.S. and global financial system will be held to account. The investigation of this global crime enterprise required coordinated action by law enforcement authorities in at least 15 different countries. Such an enormous undertaking would not have been possible without the terrific work of the Criminal Division's Office of International Affairs, or the close partnership that we have had with the United States Secret Service and IRS-CI through the GIFT, ICE, HSI, and the Treasury Department. Finally, I want to acknowledge our many foreign law enforcement partners for their simply stellar cooperation in this case. Now I'd like to turn it over to Special Agent in Charge Stephen Hughes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming out this afternoon. Today's indictments charge 7 Liberty Reserve's principals and employees with money laundering and operating an unlicensed money transmitting business. Liberty Reserve promoted itself as a digital currency system, provided an alternative payment platform for Internet users to transfer money online. This long-term investigation has brought to light the true purpose of Liberty Reserve, and that is to provide global cybercriminal elements to launder and distribute proceeds of their criminal activity. A majority of Liberty Reserve business appears to be derived from criminal activity to include financial crimes, hacking networks, child pornography, securities fraud, and drug trafficking. This investigation by our Electronic Crimes Task Force and our partners has proven that members of Liberty Reserve willingly operated a banking system designed to defeat industry standards of the banking sector. Cyber criminals should be reminded today that they are unable to hide behind the anonymity of the Internet to avoid regulated financial systems. The Secret Service would like to thank the Global Illicit Financial Team hosted by the IRS, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and our international law enforcement partners to include the Judicial Investigation Organization in Costa Rica, the National High-Tech Crime Unit in the Netherlands, the Spanish National Police, and the Swiss Federal Prosecutor's Office, among others, for the international assistance in this very complicated case. And of course, I'd like to thank the Southern District of New York for requesting our assistance in this investigation and the tireless work of the Assistant U.S. Attorneys assigned to this case. And thank you, Preet, for all your help as well.
Thanks very much. And now let me call to the podium Rich Weber, Chief of IRS Criminal Investigations.
Good afternoon. On behalf of IRS Criminal Investigation, I'm extremely proud to stand before you today in partnership with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Department of Justice and the other law enforcement agencies here. We are now entering the cyber age of money laundering, where those engaged in all forms of illegal activity are gravitating to digital currency alternatives as a means to move, conceal, and enjoy their ill-gotten gains. If Al Capone were alive today, this is how he would be hiding his money. Capitalizing on this emerging demand to cyber launder, it is alleged that Liberty Reserve moves staggering amounts of illegal funds. They thought they were electronically incognito, traceless to law enforcement. But what they did not anticipate was our robust partnerships with domestic and international law enforcement, collectively allowing us to follow the digital money trail within and outside our borders. Our efforts today shatter the belief among high-tech money launderers that what happens in cyberspace stays in cyberspace. No longer should they lull themselves into a false sense of security, thinking that the internet provides absolute anonymity. IRS-CI special agents have gone beyond their brick-and-mortar methods of following the money. Let's just say that we're not your father's accountants. We can still sleuth through stacks of ledgers and find the heavily buried illegal transactions. But today, we can also skillfully surf the digital highways, turning over the critical electronic stones and find where the criminals are hiding and spending their illegal proceeds. This case should send a strong message to those who feel that they can hide behind a digital wall, effortlessly moving and transferring money domestically and internationally without a trace. Their consuming greed will always leave a paper trail, whether it's in paper or digital form. Liberty Reserve has operated one of the world's most widely used digital currencies. They claim to provide users with the ability to instantaneously send and receive payments from anyone and anywhere around the globe. They had more than 1 million users worldwide, conducted more than 12 million financial transactions, and laundered more than $6 billion in a 6 to 7 year period. It is alleged that Liberty Reserve facilitated a broad range of criminal activity, including ID theft, credit card fraud, investment fraud, computer hacking, child pornography, narcotics trafficking, and the list goes on and on. The magnitude of the alleged cyber money laundering serves to strengthen our resolve to vigorously root out any institution that endeavors to move and conceal ill-gotten gains electronically, both domestically and internationally. Today, justice is being served, but our job is not done. We will not allow criminals to use international digital money services to circumvent the U.S. monetary system. I want to thank my entire team of IRS-CI special agents, investigative analysts, and supervisors for their outstanding work on this investigation. I want to commend all the agencies that were involved in this case and part of the IRS-CI-led Global Illicit Financial Team. And finally, I want to thank the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Department of Justice for their outstanding leadership on this important, critical, and complex case. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Now let me call to the podium Jim Hayes, Special Agent in charge of ICE here in New York.
Thanks very much, Preet, and good afternoon. We're very pleased to play an important role in this groundbreaking investigation. In 2010, Homeland Security Investigations agents assigned to our Cybercrime Center in Washington, D.C., and agents assigned to our Washington, D.C. office became aware of Liberty Reserve and the underground economy it is alleged to have facilitated. Understanding the value and benefits that a task force approach brings to international investigations, especially those involving complex fraud and financial crimes, HSI agents coordinated with the IRS-led Global Illicit Financial Team, and working through that platform, partnered with IRS-CID, the United States Secret Service, U.S. Attorney's Office, and the Department of Justice's Asset Forfeiture and Money Laundering section. To uncover the entirety of the Liberty Reserve scheme, which, as you've already heard, provided an almost completely anonymous venue for criminals to pay for and receive payment for all kinds of illegal activity, including credit card theft, narcotics trafficking, Ponzi investment schemes, and the most vile of crimes involving the exploitation of innocent children. In fact, task force agents investigating the case determined that almost all of the transactions where Liberty Reserve currency was used involved illegal activity. In 2012, agents assigned to my office, the Homeland Security Investigations Office in Manhattan, joined the investigation and working through our El Dorado task force. HSI continued to pursue information with our law enforcement partners and gather evidence relating to the money laundering scheme to further identify and locate those responsible for operating and maintaining the Liberty Reserve operation. As the collective team moved to arrest those individuals and shut the operation down, we are pleased to have played a major role, relying heavily on our vast international footprint, which includes 75 attaché offices in 48 countries. In addition to the HSI personnel assigned to the Cybercrime Center and Washington, D.C., HSI personnel in Spain, Costa Rica, Morocco, and Panama all played a part in this investigation. As has been mentioned here, this investigation highlights the cohesive nature of federal law enforcement and the incredible importance in today's world of partnership around the globe. As always, United States Attorney Preet Bharara and his team, including Rich Sable and Sharon Cohen-Levin, provided outstanding leadership guidance and support, as did the team from DOJ AFMILS. Congratulate Chief Weber on the success of the Global Illicit Financial Team and look forward to working more significant investigations together. And we're grateful as well to have partners like the Secret Service within our own department, and fortunate to work so closely together here in New York with Special Agent in Charge Steve Hughes. Finally, from my office here in New York, I want to recognize Assistant Special Agent in Charge Jody Foresta and Case Agent Anthony Gittino, who work closely with the HSI Washington Special Agent in Charge John Torres and his team and all the partners involved here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And finally, it is an honor to have with us Undersecretary of the Treasury for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence, David Cohen.
Thank you, Preet. Good afternoon. I'd like to take just a few minutes to describe how the criminal enforcement activities that have just been described can work in tandem with Treasury's regulatory actions to deliver an especially powerful blow against illicit financial activity. Along with the criminal indictments unsealed today, the Treasury Department, acting under Section 311 of the USA Patriot Act, has taken regulatory action by finding Liberty Reserve to be a financial institution of primary money laundering concern. We took this action because Liberty Reserve, a web-based money transfer system or virtual currency, is being exploited by criminals worldwide to store, transfer, and launder the proceeds of a wide variety of illegal activities. Liberty Reserve located its operations outside the United States deliberately to avoid U.S. anti-money laundering safeguards, and in a jurisdiction with historically weak anti-money laundering rules so that it could operate with as little regulatory oversight as possible. Not surprisingly, Liberty Reserve became the preferred payment method for cyber criminals, including those involved in identity theft, selling stolen credit card numbers, perpetrating online scams, and disseminating computer malware. So along with today's finding that Liberty Reserve is a primary money laundering concern, Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, is also issuing a notice of proposed rulemaking that would prohibit U.S. financial institutions from opening or maintaining correspondent or payable through accounts for foreign banks that process transactions involving Liberty Reserve. If adopted, this rule would effectively cut off Liberty Reserve from the U.S. financial system. The actions taken by Treasury today are designed to protect the integrity of the U.S. financial system from the risk posed by Liberty Reserve, an online virtual currency money transfer system that was conceived and operated specifically to allow for and encourage illicit use because of the anonymity that it offers. Liberty Reserve thus threatens the financial system by facilitating anonymous transactions among cybercriminals, ultimately involving more traditional financial institutions when so-called Liberty Reserve dollars are converted into U.S. dollars. In addition, Liberty Reserve also threatens the U.S. financial system by providing financial services to the developers and purchasers of financial malware, computer programs designed to penetrate banks' cyber defenses and hack into core systems and databases. Now, this is the first time that we have used Section 311 to target a virtual currency provider. In recent years, virtual currencies have become a popular method of transferring funds because of the ability to conduct transactions anytime from any location with internet access. I want to make clear that today's action does not mean that we are trying to eliminate virtual currencies. To the contrary, mobile and internet-based financial technology, including virtual currencies, hold great promise to empower consumers, encourage the development of innovative financial products, and expand access to financial services. In fact, FinCEN issued guidance in March 2013 to bring clarity and regulatory certainty for businesses and individuals engaged in money transmitting services and offering virtual currencies. This guidance explains that under FinCEN's rules, administrators or exchangers of virtual currencies have registration requirements and a broad range of effective anti-money laundering, record-keeping, and reporting responsibilities. Those offering virtual currencies must comply with these regulatory requirements, and if they do so, they have nothing to fear from Treasury. But where, as here, an online money transmitter is deliberately designed to avoid regulatory scrutiny and tailors its services to illicit actors looking to launder their ill-gotten gains, Treasury will act to prevent abuse of the financial system. Financial institutions cannot escape regulatory scrutiny simply by operating purely as virtual entities. More broadly, Treasury is committed to enhancing financial institutions' cybersecurity, from chairing the Financial and Banking Information Infrastructure Committee to sharing information with the financial sector about specific cyber threats, and of course, taking actions like those today that combine Treasury authorities with those of our criminal law enforcement partners to disrupt illicit actors in cyberspace. In closing, I want to recognize the outstanding work of the team at FinCEN, led by Director Jennifer Shasky-Calvary, as well as our partners in the Department of Justice, IRS Criminal Investigation, the United States Secret Service, and Homeland Security Investigations. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Happy to take your questions. Thanks for, oh, yes. You know, I'm not in a position today to talk about what goes on with respect to other areas where this might arise, except to say that it's something, as I think is evidenced by the fact that so many of us are focusing on this, including folks at ICE and the Treasury Department and the Department of Justice, that you know, we are committed to rooting it out everywhere. And we hope that to the extent people are thinking about this elsewhere and with respect to other virtual currency systems, that they'll think twice if they're going to try to make it a hub of illegal activity. Yeah.
What percentage of the transactions do you think were illicit, and how much was legitimate, if any?
I mean, as alleged in the indictment, we say that virtually all of it was laundered money, and that very little of it, if any, was legitimate. That's the allegation.
And then if there were legitimate people using it, is there some mechanism for them to get the money?
Yeah, I mean, again, to be clear, the allegation is that this was set up for purposes of attracting people who were engaged in criminal conduct and all manner of criminal conduct to the site and to use Liberty Reserve virtual currency. That said, it is possible that there are folks who were inadvertent victims of offenses that went on through Liberty Reserve, and if those people exist, there's a phone number in our release that people can call on, and we'll do the best we can to get people their money back to the extent that's appropriate. Yeah.
Two things. How does this relate to Bitcoin, and why is the name of the judge redacted in the papers?
I'm not going to talk about any other virtual currency system, as I said, and the action we brought today relates only to Liberty Reserve and no other system. And I reiterate the words of the Undersecretary that by this action, we're not taking any position on virtual currency generally, and we're not taking any position with respect to any particular other company that engages in something that may look on the surface like something that Liberty Reserve was doing. With respect to the redaction, it is the unfortunate case that there are individuals who believe in personal retaliation in the cyber world, and so a precaution was taken there. Yeah.
Virtual currency is maybe an unfamiliar concept still to a lot of people. Can you explain what makes LR different from dollars that might move in cyberspace?
Yeah, I mean, and other people should be happy to add to what I have to say. It's essentially a system for people without using actual dollars to engage in a transaction. And the way that Liberty Reserve worked, as alleged in the papers and the indictment and all the other papers that we filed and unsealed today, what would happen is someone would want to engage in a transaction with someone else, and they would put actual money in a form that we're used to in connection with in a third-party exchanger, and then that third-party exchanger would also have an account with Liberty Reserve, and then to the extent a transaction was taking place, the Liberty Reserve account would either be credited or added to or subtracted from, depending on what the transaction was supposed to be.
So then how does somebody collect their cash?
As I think I pointed out in my remarks, you collect the cash the same way you put cash in. It has to go out through, in order to make a withdrawal, it has to go through a third-party exchanger as well from Liberty Reserve. It could not go, there was no mechanism for withdrawing money that you might have in your virtual account at Liberty Reserve directly. It would have to go through one of these third parties that, as also alleged, in most cases was a company that was recommended by Liberty Reserve's principals itself. Yeah.
So how liable were these what's the liability against these third-party exchangers?
None of them are charged at this moment, but we have taken action as laid out in some of the papers and shut down some of those servers and sites as well, and the investigation remains ongoing as always. Thanks, everybody. Yes, okay.
I have a question about the banking, the U.S. banking financial institutions that was mentioned. Is there evidence that U.S. banking institutions or financial institutions inadvertently got ensnared and somehow these third parties?
I don't think we have any allegation about that in these papers now. Yeah.
conducted and the actions that have been taken. Do you see this as the kind of case that's going to be, that there will be other cases like this brought in the future, that this will be the first of many, or?
Yeah. I mean, the hope is that anybody else thinking about engaging this kind of activity is terrified and will not engage in it, so we don't have to do it again. That said, we don't live in that kind of an ideal world. So my expectation is that the group you see assembled here, all of us or some subset of us, are continuing to look at these issues. That's why the regulatory action was taken today in addition to the criminal action, and why the forfeiture action was taken today in addition to the regulatory action and the criminal action. And there's a lot of people focused on this because they think it's a big deal and it's serious, and you'll probably see us again. Yeah.
Can you tell us where in the U.S. the arrest took place, and also where the residences and offices were searched?
The arrest in the U.S. at Brooklyn, both in Brooklyn, and the searches were also in Brooklyn.
Given that the founder of this operation had been convicted in a similar operation earlier, didn't he have some kind of scrutiny on him?
I'm not going to comment on what his criminal record is, and obviously there was scrutiny in connection with this case, as is laid out in the indictment. At one point, you had U.S. law enforcement authorities that had said that they were taking a look, and that's when, as described in the indictment, that Liberty Reserve took additional evasive actions and engaged in direct lying to the Costa Rican authorities as well. Yeah. It's your third question.
What gives you jurisdiction here in the Southern District?
All sorts of money transactions went through the Southern District of New York.
Was a threat made against the judge, or was this taken as a precaution?
I'm not going to comment on that. Yeah.
The New York State case, it sounds like he was still convicted of convicted of New York State charges of operating an unlicensed business, and then he moves in December. He moves in the same year. He goes to Costa Rica and starts up Liberty Reserve. Can you tell us, was he awaiting prosecution? I mean, was he convicted?
I'm not going to comment on anything having to do with any prior record that he may have. To the extent that's a matter of the public record, you can take a look at that. Yeah.
Was the redaction ordered by the judge, or did you guys do that on your own?
My understanding is that it was not ordered by the judge.
So, publicly filed version should contain the judge's name?
It may. You're free to look at that. Thanks, everybody.